Welcome to another episode of Trident Talks. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nate of 7AI. Nate, how are you?
I am excellent. Thanks for having me.
Good. No, thanks for joining. 7AI are making lots of noise at the moment. We see them everywhere. Obviously, huge round of funding last year and lots of growth happening. The AI in security space is massive right now. Nate, would you mind just giving us a brief introduction as to who you are, where you've come from, and a little bit about 7AI, please?
Sure, happy to. So, yep, I'm Nate Burke. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at 7AI. Before this, I was the first US employee at Exonius. Joined before we had a product, and I left just after we crossed 100 million in ARR. Before that, I was at one of the early SOAR companies, Hexadite, that got acquired by Microsoft. And then years before that, I was at one of the early cloud security companies that was acquired by Cisco. So I've done probably 5 or 6 cybersecurity startups, now at 7AI. And to your question, what do we do? So you're probably going to hear a lot about AI agents. You probably already have. If you have a TV, you've probably seen the Salesforce ads with like Matthew McConaughey, and everyone's talking about AI agents. And what we're really doing is we're using AI agents to offload what we call non-human work to AI agents in security specifically. And what I mean by that is, we see the world in 2 separate buckets. One is human work, and the other is non-human work. And human work is the stuff that requires people, requires creativity, requires a brain, right? But then if you look at anything you do in work, there's so much that is manual, repetitive. You do it over and over and over again. You can almost do it in your sleep as long as your fingers can hit a keyboard. And in security, we see that a lot. There's so many things that are very, very repetitive. Let me just check this URL, or let me look at this file. Things that human beings don't need to do. They want to see the result. And so if we can offload a lot of that work to AI agents, then people aren't spending their time on the toil work, the mundane. And instead, what they're able to do is use the result of those investigations in our case to be able to instead do the strategic work and the reason that people get into cybersecurity in the first place. So we have an agentic security platform that helps people go from an alert to full investigation to conclusion, so that people in the SOC can, instead of doing all of those in-between tasks, but instead see the result of investigations so they can decide what to do.
Nice. Thanks for the overview. I think that the AI space, or the AI in security space, let's be specific. I mean, AI on its own is a whole different ball game, right? But AI in security is a hot topic right now. Um, and it's, I think it took everyone a little while to kind of differentiate the two sides, right? So you have AI that's being used by security products, which has been around for a long time, and then you have products that are specifically being built to either enhance human efforts, like what you guys are doing, and to take away some of that boring, mundane tasks. And there's a lot of organizations being built right now. And then obviously you have the other side, right, where it's companies that are protecting against AI, which is a whole different kettle of fish altogether.
Or protecting
Um,
AI too, right? So
yeah,
then there's
right.
those
Yeah, yeah,
companies that
yeah.
are protecting the models, right? Yeah, there's just a lot of noise in the market. There really is.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's interesting. Like it's great to have you on. What most of my conversations, we're running a series at the moment, which is specifically around AI and security.
Mhm.
And most of the conversations I've had have been with either sales leaders or CEOs. I've not spoken to many like CMOs, right? And someone
Mhm.
like yourself, where you've been there, done it, the whole startup thing, like you're very good at building, clearly, right? Exonius,
Mhm.
massive success story. It'd be good to get your take on how you're differentiating yourself in such a congested space, and like
Yeah.
what's the messaging, how are you guys getting yourself out there, and how are you doing so well?
Yeah. So to me, and I think everyone does this at a certain stage, is you end up just talking about the how you do it instead of the why, right? So you're talking about, I'm using AI agents and they do it this way and they're faster, they're this, they're that, and everyone kind of does that. But what really stands out is the why you're doing it in the first place. And so what we end up talking a lot about is, what are you actually trying to do? Like what are the outcomes you're hoping to accomplish? And so instead of leading with the new cool technology, what we're saying is, when we talk to a CISO or a SOC leader and we're saying, what challenges do you have? Forget about AI for a second. What are you trying to accomplish? In a lot of cases, they're saying, and it's been like this for years, we have way too many alerts. We can't possibly follow up. And so what we've done as an industry is we've built all of these tools to take all of these alerts and then squeeze them into a SIM or a SOAR. And then after that, we're building all of these rules so that we take 1,000 alerts, and after that, we get 100 alerts, and then we're still just handing it to a person. And that person takes those 100 alerts, and then they're saying, I can only look at a certain percentage of them. A certain percentage of those things are false positives, right? So we're just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. And what we're saying is now with AI agents, you're able to investigate all of those things, right? And so instead of taking the idea of, I've got all these alerts, I'm going to ignore a certain percentage of them, I'm going to use something like prioritization and say there's a percentage that I'm willing to ignore. What we're saying is you wouldn't do that if you could look at everything. And so what we're saying is, all right, first of all, you don't want to look at everything. It doesn't make sense. You can't possibly hire enough people to do that. There's just no way. Then
Yeah.
we're saying, and out of that, 80%, 90% are false positives anyway. So what we're saying is, forget the way you've done it in the past. If we can just insert AI agents in the middle where people are doing stuff or where those rules-based systems are, and then have those AI agents go to talk to where the data lives instead of moving it, shifting it, duplicating it, squeezing it, then what we're able to do is say, all right, we're going to investigate everything. We're going to do it faster. They're more thorough. AI agents don't sleep. They don't go on vacation. They don't get sick of it, right? And the other part of that is, well, what would you do with your people if they could do better things? And one of the questions I always ask people is, if I could give you back 25% of your time, what would you do?
Yeah.
And everyone has an answer, right? So we're talking at that level. And then the AI agent thing becomes the how. And it's just, that's the enabler to get to the situation where you're saying, I want my people doing strategic stuff. I want them doing proactive things. I want them to do red teaming, hunting. I want them to do the things that people thought about when they got into cybersecurity in the first place. No one got into cybersecurity to say, I really want to go hunt down alerts and bounce things off VirusTotal. Like, you just don't do that.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why you see such churn. That's why people leave. That's why it's so hard to find these people, because you find a person, they're all excited, and you sit them down and they're spending all of their time just chasing things. And
To
we're saying,
mundane,
you don't have to
mundane
do that.
task, right?
You
Yeah,
got it.
that's not what they
So
signed up for.
that's the kind of differentiation that we have is we want to understand what you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And once we get to that, and then we're saying, cool, if you solve that, what are you going to do next? And then we have those conversations. And then it's, all right, now let's see if we can do it. And if those AI agents can actually do what we're saying, what are you going to do now? And it changes the conversation completely.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think, and this is from an outside perspective, what I see is I see everyone talking about the tech and the
Yep,
agents and what they're doing, but not necessarily why.
that's
And
right.
I think if you guys can get that messaging right, and clearly you have because it's working, then it just opens up more conversations. One thing I'm guessing you agree with this, but I'm definitely starting to see a shift in the perspective of how AI can be used as well. Like, I'm in a few groups with CISOs and WhatsApp groups and stuff, and there's definitely more openness to organizations buying products like yours, where even 12 months ago, right, people were still quite skeptical. It's like, does it work? Can you replace this elements? But I'd say that that's becoming more of a like an agreeable topic nowadays, where people are like, yeah, it does work. Let's give it a go.
Yeah, and I think the only way that works is with total transparency. And one of the things that we've done as we built the product is show everything. So in the course of an investigation, in just the UI of our product alone, we're saying, okay, here is the alert. Here's what agent had what mission. Here's the questions they asked. Here's the input. Here's the output. Here's the conclusion. So for every step along the way, we show it. And when we're doing a POC, in a lot of cases, we're saying, I want you to look at everything. Is this what you would have an analyst do? And is this the conclusion that they would have come to? I feel like in the scenario where everything's a black box, you're just not going to get that trust. But if
Yeah.
everything is out there in front of you, then there's no reason not to both trust it and start using it. And in our case, what we're doing right now is everything is just done by read-only APIs, right? Eventually, we'll get to the point where we can do the remediation stuff automatically, and that's a whole different trust issue. But for now, it's what is the risk of using this if you can not only see the results, but you know that this is all read only and nothing's going to break? It makes it a lot easier for someone to say, why not give it a shot?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's about the CISOs and the security teams also being realistic around what these AI products can actually cover and what they can help with. Like, I'm a big believer that AI is, I think in security, not going to replace everything, right? It's there. It should be there to help and enhance
Yep.
humans. And like we said at the start, if you can get, as an analyst, if you can get 25% of your time back, or as a CISO, you can give your whole team 25% of your time back because you can use a product like 7AI
That's right.
to take away the mundane, boring tasks, and it's a no-brainer. Um, but I'm definitely, like I said, I'm definitely starting to see people kind of be way more receptive to it. Whereas maybe even 12 months ago, people were kind of like, not sure, not sure. Is there anything, like, last question for me? Is there anything that you see in the next 6, 12 months, any trends you guys have seen where, you think there's other areas where AI is going to be pushed in other areas to security or anything else that's out there that's kind of making waves at the moment that we should look out for? Appreciate you guys are head down, kind of focusing on your own thing, but have you had any requests, I guess, from customers to, can you do this? Can you do that?
All the time, all the time. And so I think one of the things you said too is scoping for something small to start with. And I think that's the big issue where you're saying, okay, maybe AI is this magic that's going to be able to let me do things that I couldn't before. But making sure that you're saying, all right, I'm going to start here with this one use case. And instead of let me deploy everywhere, it's really hard to just do everything all at once. So having a small scope to get started is where everybody goes. But then they're saying, all right, well, this worked and this worked. Well, what about this? So we hear from customers all the time about new use cases, but it's only after they see the results of the first thing that they've solved. And so we see that everywhere. There's so many different things. I mean, just think in your daily life, forget about security for a minute. How many things do you just completely like repeat daily over and over and over again? And
Yeah.
you're just saying like, if I could just offload this stuff, my favorite one, and I won't get too far into it, is expense reports. That's my
Yeah.
least favorite thing in the world, right? I have to find the receipt, then I have to submit it to a system, and then I have to look at my calendar to see what day, like all of that stuff. There are so many systems that know this data already. If I could just have an agent that connects to my calendar, see my travel schedule, and knows that I'm going to RSA, and then it says, all right, and I can see here that my flight is, JetBlue, and then I'm staying at this hotel. Like you can access all of that data and
Yeah.
then find the receipts and then, just put it in front of me. So I click submit. How much time would that save me? Now
Yeah.
think about that in the security context and you kind of can see how broad this can go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, we've introduced some AI tools here at Trident, and
Yeah.
even simple things like a note taker. I mean, we're on sometimes 10 to 15 calls a day, and not having to take notes or write on a pad is
Yeah.
just life changing. Like, it sounds so simple now, but we're like, why didn't we do this before?
Yeah.
So then when you put that into context, like you said, in the security teams and the amount of data and stuff they're looking at and the amount of alerts that are being brought in, like if that can be handled by
Well, think of it in
AI.
in like the HR or like talent acquisition of just how much time is spent looking through resumes to see if
Yeah,
this person actually has the requirements for the job.
yeah,
And if you could instead hand that off and then look at the filters and understand, all right, this pile looks like they're right. Just that alone, how much
yeah.
people time goes into that? It's insane.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, look, I appreciate your time, and I think look, you guys are doing great stuff already, but very excited to follow the journey. I appreciate you joining me today, Nate. And for everyone watching, keep an eye on 7AI because they're doing some cool stuff.
All right, thanks.